What if, without warning, without an explosion, without a sound, the Earth suddenly stopped revolving on its axis, not slowing down, not gradually easing to a halt, but stopping instantly, freezing its rotation in a single, terrifying moment? Because right now, at this very second, Earth is spinning at over 1,670 kilometers per hour at the equator, and that motion is so constant, so invisible, that we never feel it, never question it, never imagine a world without it. But the moment it stops, physics would remind us how fragile everything truly is, because every object not anchored to the planet, atmosphere, buildings, forests, vehicles, and billions of human bodies would continue moving eastward at the same unimaginable speed, turning the surface of the planet into a global catastrophe beyond comprehension, as winds faster than any hurricane ever recorded would rip across continents, stripping the land bare, flattening cities in seconds, tearing steel from concrete and hurling debris across the sky like shrapnel, while the oceans, no longer held in place by rotational balance, would surge violently toward the east, generating global megatsunamis thousands of meters high that would drown coastlines instantly, sweeping across continents, erasing entire civilizations before most people could even process what was happening. And as the atmosphere followed the same fate, the sky itself would become a weapon, with their masses moving faster than sound, igniting fires through friction, ripping oxygen away from the surface, and making survival impossible for nearly all life. But even if, by some miracle, a small fraction of humanity survived this initial chaos, perhaps deep underground, perhaps shielded within reinforced structures, the horror would only be beginning. Because with Earth no longer rotating, day and night would cease to exist as we know them. One side of the planet would face the sun permanently, locked in endless daylight, while the other would be trapped in eternal darkness, and the line between them, the twilight zone, would become the only region where temperatures might remain barely survivable. But even there, the climate would be wildly unstable, because without rotation, the Coriolis effect would vanish, dismantling global wind patterns, collapsing weather systems, and ending the cycles that distribute heat and moisture around the planet, turning the sun-facing side into a scorched wasteland where temperatures rise beyond the boiling point of water, evaporating oceans, cracking the ground, and sterilizing the surface, while the dark side would plunge into freezing oblivion, colder than Antarctica, where the atmosphere would slowly freeze and fall as snow like oxygen and nitrogen, suffocating anything that remained. And the oceans, no longer evenly spread, would migrate toward the poles, exposing vast ocean floors and creating a single massive superocean at the ends of the planet, destroying marine ecosystems that took billions of years to evolve, while earthquakes and volcanic eruptions would increase dramatically as the planet's internal balance shifted. Because Earth's rotation subtly stabilizes its shape, and without it, the planet would slowly deform, becoming more spherical, triggering tectonic chaos across the globe. Antinteres, the magnetic field, our invisible shield against cosmic radiation, which depends partially on the motion within Earth's core. And although rotation wouldn't shut it down instantly, the long-term destabilization could weaken it, allowing deadly solar radiation to bombard the surface, stripping away the remaining atmosphere, increasing cancer rates, mutating DNA, and making the surface increasingly hostile to life in agriculture already impossible in most regions. World collapse. Entirely because plants evolved under cycles of day and night, relying on circadian rhythms to grow, photosynthesize, and reproduce. And without those cycles, ecosystems would unravel, food chains would break, and starvation would become inevitable. While technology, our last hope, would fail one system at a time as power grids collapse. Satellites drift uselessly in space, without predictable planetary motion beneath them. Navigation becomes impossible, and global communication fades into silence, isolating survivors in a world that no longer resembles Earth. And psychologically, humanity would be shattered, because the sun would never rise or set again. Time itself would lose meaning, and generations born into this frozen rotation would never know a sunrise, never experience a night sky full of stars, never understand what Earth once was, only hearing stories of a moving world where days passed, seasons changed, and life felt natural, not hostile. And eventually, even the most resilient human communities would fade. Not with a dramatic extinction event, but with a slow, quiet surrender to an environment that no longer supports complex life, leaving behind ruins beneath an unmoving sun, frozen shadows stretching endlessly across silent cities. And this thought experiment reveals something deeply unsettling yet humbling: that Earth's rotation, something we never feel, never hear, never see, is one of the most important reasons life exists at all. Because motion is not just movement, it is balance, it is stability, it is survival. And the fact that our planet has spun uninterrupted for over 4 billion years is not guaranteed, not permanent, but a fragile, cosmic coincidence, reminding us that life does not exist because the universe is safe, but because, for now, everything is still moving. And yet, the story of a motionless Earth does not end with environmental collapse or human extinction, because the true consequences would stretch far beyond the surface and far beyond humanity itself, reaching into the very mechanics of the solar system and the long-term fate of the planet. Because Earth's rotation is not just a local phenomena, it interacts subtly with the moon, the sun, and the gravitational rhythms that have shaped our world for billions of years. And when that rotation stops, tidal forces would behave differently, causing the moon's influence on Earth's oceans to change in unpredictable ways, amplifying extreme tides in some regions, while leaving others eerily still, further destabilizing coastlines and accelerating erosion on a planetary scale. While the moon itself, our ancient companion, would appear frozen in the sky from certain locations, hanging permanently above the same region of Earth, a silent witness to a planet that no longer moves. And over time, this gravitational imbalance could alter the moon's orbit slightly, introducing long-term instability into a system that has remained remarkably consistent throughout human history. And as centuries pass on this locked planet, the side facing the sun would begin to resemble Venus more than Earth, with thick clouds of evaporated water vapor trapping heat in a runaway greenhouse effect, pushing surface temperatures to levels that melt rock, while the dark side would become a frozen archive of the past, preserving cities, forests, and oceans beneath kilometers of ice, perfectly still, perfectly silent, like a museum of a civilization that once lived in balance with motion. And somewhere between these two extremes, in the narrow twilight belt, life would struggle to adapt, because while temperatures might allow liquid water, the lack of stable weather patterns would mean constant violent storms along the boundary where hot and cold air collide endlessly, generating permanent superstorms that circled the planet without end, making survival a constant battle against winds that never rest and skies that never clear. And even if small human settlements managed to persist here, their existence would be fragile, dependent on dwindling resources, artificial light cycles, and technologies slowly degrading without the industrial infrastructure needed to maintain them, while evolution itself would be forced to take a radically different path, because organisms that survive would no longer evolve under cycles of day and night or seasonal change, but under static conditions, selecting for traits that favor endurance over adaptability, leading to a biosphere that is simpler, slower, and far less diverse than the one we know today. And over tens of thousands of years, Earth would no longer be the blue planet seen from space, because the redistribution of oceans and atmosphere would strip it of its familiar appearance, turning it into a world of stark contrast, half glowing white-hot, half buried beneath reflective ice, visible even from distant planets as a symbol of imbalance. And from the perspective of the universe, Earth would join the countless lifeless worlds that orbit stars, not because they lack water or chemistry, but because they lack the delicate harmony of motion. And this realization carries a deeper truth, because rotation is not unique to Earth, it is fundamental to cosmic structure itself, from spinning galaxies to rotating stars, from orbiting planets to the twisting strands of DNA within our cells. Motion is the language of existence, and when motion stops, systems decay, order collapses, and complexity dies. Which means that Earth stopping its rotation would not just be a physical disaster, but a philosophical one, forcing us to confront how dependent life is on invisible forces we never acknowledge, and how easily the conditions that support consciousness can vanish. And if an intelligent species elsewhere in the universe were observing Earth during this event, they would not see a dramatic explosion or a sudden annihilation, but a slow fading, a planet quietly slipping out of habitability, reminding us that extinction does not always arrive as fire from the sky, but often as silence, imbalance, and stillness. And this thought experiment also reshapes how we think about time itself, because without rotation, the concept of a day becomes meaningless. Calendars lose relevance, history blurs, and memory becomes untethered from natural cycles, making it harder for surviving intelligences to measure progress, decay, or even existence in a way we understand. And this challenges a fundamental assumption we make that time is constant and reliable when in reality, our perception of time is deeply rooted in planetary motion, and without it, even consciousness might change, becoming slower, more introspective, or eventually fading altogether as the biological rhythms that regulate sleep, emotion, and cognition dissolve. And perhaps the most unsettling part is that nothing in physics strictly forbids such a scenario, because while it is extraordinarily unlikely, it is not impossible for a massive external force such as a near collision with a rogue planet, an extreme gravitational interaction, or an unimaginable cosmic event to disrupt Earth's rotation. And the universe has no obligation to preserve habitability, no promise to protect life, and no preference for stability. Which means that the reason Earth still spins today is not because it must, but because nothing has stopped it yet, and that realization reframes our place in the cosmos, revealing that life exists not as a rule, but as an exception balanced delicately on motion, distance, gravity, and time. And when we zoom out even further, Earth's rotation becomes part of a much larger cosmic story, one where entropy always wins eventually, where stars burn out, galaxies drift apart, and even motion itself will one day fade as the universe approaches heat death, making a non-rotating Earth a preview of a far future where stillness dominates everything. And yet within this dark conclusion lies a strange sense of meaning. Because the fact that Earth is spinning right now, that the sun rises and sets, that winds circulate, that oceans flow, that life breathes, not ordinary, not guaranteed, but extraordinary. And understanding how easily it could all disappear does not make existence meaningless, but infinitely precious. Because every sunrise depends on motion. Every heartbeat mirrors rotation. Every moment of life is borrowed from a universe that favors change over permanence. And so when we ask what would happen if Earth stopped revolving, the answer is not just destruction, but revelation, a reminder that stability is an illusion created by motion, that survival depends on balance, and that the quiet, constant spin beneath our feet is one of the greatest miracles we will ever ignore, until the day it stops.